There's no racing going on in Formula One, but we've had a crazy few days in the driver market, starting with Sebastian Vettel announcing he was leaving Ferrari. Carlos Sainz Jr. has got that drive, and we've got another video on that already. But here today, we're going to talk about Sainz's replacement, which is Daniel Ricciardo, who leaves Renault to go to McLaren. I'm Glenn Freeman, and I'm joined by our F1 journalist, Scott Mitchell, who was supposed to take some holiday this week, and that hasn't gone very well at all. Now, Scott, some lovely words from McLaren in Sainz's direction about his next adventure and moving on to Ferrari, but not quite the same reaction from Renault towards Daniel Ricciardo. So before I bring you in, I'm going to read to everybody the statement that was put out by Cyril Abiteboul, Renault team boss. And he said, "In our sport, and particularly within the current extraordinary situation, reciprocated confidence, unity and commitment are more than ever critical values for a works team." That is very clearly a dig at Ricciardo. What do you make of it? And the fact that Renault felt the need to say something like that on a day when it's lost its star driver effectively?
Well, he's calling Ricciardo's loyalty into question, which I guess I can understand the logic of it in a way, because Ricciardo's on a monster salary and he's not even driven the 2020 car in anger. So from Renault's point of view, they're sort of thinking, come on, man, we've given you everything you asked for and more. We've given you the recognition financially, and you've not even actually given us chance to prove that we're on the right trajectory and on a better trajectory than McLaren. So why are you leaving us now? But there's an etiquette that should be followed with stuff like this, or an etiquette that is normally followed like this. And McLaren's release about Sainz was a really good example, because it was all about it was warmth and sincerity about the role that Sainz has played at McLaren so far, and wishing him the best for the future. And Renault doesn't even recognise anything Ricciardo's done so far, or reference his next step. So I think it's petulant from Renault. It reflects badly on them, and it reflects on a sort of paranoia or something within the hierarchy, that they can't look inwards and address their own faults. They're always looking for someone to blame. And if nothing else, it shows that Ricciardo's absolutely making the right move to get out of there, because a team that is unable to look inward and see what they're doing wrong and looks for scapegoats is never going to make up the ground that they need to challenge a team like Mercedes, for example, which is so well sorted.
There's also the issue here that Renault's ditched plenty of drivers in the past who maybe would want some loyalty. I know you spoke about that on social media, and of course Ricciardo was promised a team that could take the fight to the big teams. And it was, in fact, a team that, when he joined it, went backwards in 2019. So let's look at his journey here. He knew going to Renault was a gamble, and he probably had exit strategies in mind if it didn't work out. But would he have hoped to make a bigger step up the grid if he was to leave Renault?
Oh, yeah, definitely. When Ricciardo made the move, or the decision to leave Red Bull, proven race-winning team, didn't quite buy into the Honda project, didn't really fancy his chances of making that team any less Team Max Verstappen as it was already becoming. The idea was that Renault would be the best bet to bridge the gap to Mercedes, Red Bull and Ferrari, and then if it didn't work out, then he'd be in a position to take advantage of someone like Vettel leaving Ferrari, or Lewis Hamilton leaving Mercedes, or any of these situations, and get himself back into an established big team, provided Renault wasn't good enough to get there itself. As it happens, he's effectively wasted his 2019 season. Obviously 2020 is a bit of a disaster, whichever way you look at it, but he's not going to win the title this year with Renault, and now he's going to go to another team that's at the front of the midfield. So from an objective point of view, it looks like Ricciardo's taken one step back by going from Red Bull to Renault, but he's not taking a step forward now to get back to where he was going before. He's sort of stepped back and then aside. So on paper, it really doesn't look like a very sensible decision. But obviously McLaren is in a different place to Renault. McLaren now is what Renault looked like to Ricciardo a couple of years ago. So it's not a like-for-like change. It is swapping a manufacturer team for a customer team. McLaren is Renault's customer at the moment. It will be Mercedes' customer next year. But Ricciardo is basically doing what he thinks or hopes is going to be the best decision for him. And just going back to what you were saying in comparison to the comments on loyalty and what Renault's done before, whenever Renault has flicked a driver, whether it was Kevin Magnussen, then Jolyon Palmer, Carlos Sainz or Nico Hülkenberg, it's always done that because it suits its agenda. It's the decision that Renault needs to make in the best interest of Renault as an F1 team. That's all Ricciardo's done now. Renault is not the best decision for Ricciardo to make at the moment. It's not the best place for him to be. McLaren is a slightly better place to be. And if it's only half a step forward, it's still half a step further forward than he would have been if he stayed.
Now let's talk about McLaren very quickly here. This is a team that needed a reset, needed to get away from the Fernando Alonso era, and the Sainz-Lando Norris partnership it had last year helped it do that. It moved to the front of the midfield. Crucially, it moved ahead of Renault. Where is it now in the journey, and is this the right time for it to plug a proven race winner in Ricciardo back into the team?
Yeah, I think I would characterise McLaren as actually the biggest winner out of this weird merry-go-round we've been on for the last couple of days, because I really rate Carlos Sainz, and McLaren, it is a loss to lose someone like him who had spearheaded the first phase of the McLaren revival after their sort of dismal decline with Honda and then that awful first season with Renault engines in 2018. But Sainz isn't a proven Grand Prix winner and a proven title aspirant and someone who can do the job that Ricciardo does. He might well be. We might find that out next year. But what McLaren's doing is trading a guy who had the potential to be a Grand Prix winner for someone who is a Grand Prix winner. And obviously Renault's losing that proven Grand Prix winner. So of the three teams involved in this, I think McLaren comes out really, really well. And the reason it's been able to do that is because 2 years ago, it tried to sign Ricciardo when Ricciardo was thinking of leaving Red Bull, but it couldn't because it wasn't in a strong enough position. But this time it's been able to convince Ricciardo. So that speaks volumes for the amount of confidence that drivers have in the McLaren project. They've done a really good job of righting the wrongs of the last few years. In Andreas Seidel, I think they've got arguably the best team boss in F1 outside of Toto Wolff. He's very much in the Wolff mould of being a team boss. And he's an ex-engineer, so he knows sort of what a race team needs. He knows what engineers needs. He also knows what a driver needs because he's worked with people like Vettel in the past. So McLaren's in this really good position. They've had Seidel and Zach Brown have been able to convince the shareholders to invest in major infrastructure projects. So all the money is being spent. Money's being spent in the right areas. They've made clear progress. They've got a great team in place now. And James Key, we were meant to see the first car that he designed. So all of these things are coming together for McLaren, and it showed in proper progress in 2019, and they were really optimistic that they made a good step for 2020 as well. Renault, by comparison, is just this weird sort of up and down. They take 2 steps forward, then 1 step back, and then they get like they'll sack someone and bring someone else in, and it's just a massive mess. McLaren's progress is definitely sort of on hold at the moment because the new rules aren't going to come in when they hoped. They're going to come in 2022 instead. So you've got a little bit of a holding pattern for McLaren in 21, which Ricciardo won't be happy with, and Seidel and Zach Brown and everybody, that they'll have hoped to have done that a bit sooner. But that doesn't mean that the upward curve is completely disrupted. And when the new cars come in, when the budget cap comes in, I really think McLaren's going to be in a great position, the best of any other team, with the exception of maybe Racing Point / Aston Martin, given how much money that team's going to have. I think McLaren is going to be in the best team to bridge that gap to the front three, and which is why Ricciardo's taken a punt on them, and why McLaren's now ready for a driver like Ricciardo when it really did need to get away from the negativity of Fernando Alonso and focus on its own problems a couple of years ago.
So a good move for Ricciardo, and who knows, maybe Fernando Alonso will turn up somewhere on the grid again very soon. But let us know what you think of all the moves that has happened this week. Vettel leaving Ferrari, Sainz going to Ferrari, Ricciardo replacing Sainz, and maybe what Renault will do. Perhaps we'll come back very soon to talk about that one. Remember to like this video and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you again very soon.